This is the Bears Barroom Radio Network. Parental discretion is advised.
The Spider-Man Far From Home trailer is about to play, but if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame yet, stop watching because there's some serious spoilers about to come up. But if you have seen Avengers Endgame, enjoy the trailer. Everywhere I go, I see his face. I just really miss him.
Yeah, I miss him too. I don't think Tony would have done what he did if he didn't know that you were going to be here after he was gone.
You gonna be the next Iron Man now?
Well, no, I don't have time. I'm too busy doing your jobs.
Oh.
I'm kidding. Look, keep up the good work because I am going on vacation.
Heads up, Nick Fury's calling you.
I don't really want to talk to Nick
Answer
Fury.
the phone.
Why?
Because if you don't talk to him, then I have to talk to him. I don't want to talk to him. You sent Nick Fury to voicemail?
I gotta go.
You do not ghost Nick Fury.
What up, dorks? What's up? We're just talking about the trip.
I'm here in St. Marco Polo. Oh,
I think MJ really likes me.
That reminds me when I first fell in love.
You're a very difficult person to contact, Spider-Man. This is Mr. Beck.
We could have used someone like you on my world.
Your world?
Beck is from Earth, just not ours. The snap tore a hole in our dimension.
You're saying there's a multiverse?
We have a job to do, and you're coming with us.
There's gotta be someone else you can use. What about Thor?
Off-world.
Captain Marvel? Unavailable. But I'm just a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Bitch, please, you've been to space.
What do you want, Peter?
I want to go back on my trip with the girl who I really like and tell her how I feel. MJ, I
am Spider-Man.
No, of course I'm not.
I mean, it's kind of obvious.
You're right, you may not be ready, but this is my responsibility. Saving the world requires sacrifice. Sometimes people die.
Oh my God.
I just always feel like I'm putting my friends in danger. The world needs the next Iron Man.
Are you going to step up or not?
Out of here! Get on the jet!
Who are you?
I work with Spider-Man.
You work for Spider-Man?
I work with Spider-Man, not for Spider-Man. New plan.
Barflies, welcome to the Box Office Barflies podcast. I'm your host, Joey Two Scoops. You guys like to call me Joe Mandel. And if we're doing Box Office Barflies, you know who's here with me. The one, the only, John Santucci, the Tooch. Tooch, what's going on, brother?
Oh, man, it's good to be back in Box Office Barflies. Last year we did Men in Black, right?
We did Men in Black International. Yeah, it's been a while, but this is a substantially better film, in my opinion, Tooch.
Man, it was a great movie. I really enjoyed it. It's almost a perfect superhero movie. It's kind of it's got that teen drama mixed in with it, and enough action, enough mystery, enough beautiful locales, including Venice, London, and the Austrian Alps. It's a treat to look at, Joe. The special effects were amazing.
It's a great time for everybody. And speaking of a great time, we have a very special guest tonight. He is a comic connoisseur and an artist in real life. And we're going to play some music for him to bring him in Bears Barroom style. That's right. I got to play a little bit of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man theme for our friend Ethan Colchamiro. Ethan, how you doing, my man?
Oh, I'm doing great, fellas. Thanks for that awesome lead-in. Just jazzed. We are in a golden age of Spider-Man right now. Between all these movies and the amazing video game that's on the PS4.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a phenomenal time to be a Spidey fan, and Far From Home is a big reason for that.
Absolutely, man. And talk about a movie that it was highly anticipated, but for me, I feel like it kind of flew under the radar because of Endgame. And you just get this massively, for a Spider-Man film, a movie that literally crosses the world, and the cast is out of this world, as well as the post-credit scenes, which we're going to talk about later in the spoiler section. But before we get any further, guys, Tooch, I'll toss it to you first. What are your general thoughts on the film before we get into the second half of the show when we talk about spoilers?
Well, I'm trying to think back at all the people who played Spider-Man, and after this one, I'm convinced that Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man we've had.
I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah, he was fantastic. He really was good. Jake Gyllenhaal was excellent. Man, what a great character, Quentin Beck. The Mysterio character was great. Looked great. The special effects were seamless, man. It was. I mean, they blew up Venice. As far as I can tell, nothing's happened to Venice besides its sinking. So
yes, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, the film, man, it was excellent, dude. It was a great time at the movies. It's a ton of fun. It's upbeat, especially after Endgame. And it's affirming, life affirming for coming of age. It has that coming of age teen drama woven in there, and life lessons to go around.
Yeah, it definitely does. And Ethan, what are your general thoughts on the film before we dig a little deeper on it?
Sure, absolutely. And thanks again for having me on the podcast, guys. It's always a treat to join you and talk superhero movies. High level, I thought this was a perfect follow-up to Endgame. I think, this really puts the cap on the 10-year Infinity Saga, as they're calling it. But that's not to say that it's not a great Spider-Man movie on its own. I mean, it had all the elements that you'd want as a Spider-Man fan. It had the teenage drama and comedy. And, as I was watching it, I kept thinking, this is like a classic sort of teenagers on vacation movie that kept getting hijacked by a superhero movie. And that was exactly the right tone,
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, Homecoming, really felt like, they were saying, well, what would have happened if John Hughes had made a Marvel movie? And, Far From Home kind of still has that same feel and all the charm that Homecoming had, but up to the game as far as action. It's just a home run.
I felt like it was a home run too, guys, and my general thoughts on it are, for a movie that I was in so much anticipation of Endgame, and don't get me wrong, I loved Endgame. I thought it was a fantastic end to the Tony Stark era of Marvel comic, or the Marvel universe, and let's be honest, it's really the Tony Stark era. And now we're kind of ushering into the new, who's going to take up that new mantle. And that's what this movie touches on a lot. And I thought it really touched on some nice points in the beginning, especially with, as you heard in the trailer in the beginning of the show. There's a big shadow left by Iron Man, and somebody needs to kind of step away from the shadows and kind of take that role. And Peter's like, I'm a 16-year-old kid. I mean, how am I going to be able to fill those shoes? But he learns a lot of lessons throughout this film, and we're not going to touch on them specifically just yet. But I think it was masterfully done. And for me personally, this is my favorite Spider-Man film that I've ever seen. And some of those scenes with Mysterio towards the tail end of the movie are some of the most memorable in recent memory for me.
Yeah, man, I totally agree, Joe.
And, before we get into the spoiler section, I want to highlight the cast a little bit because, right now, obviously, we're all really praising Tom Holland, who just gets better every single time around. And for people that don't know, he does a lot of his own stunts. The kid can do flips. The kid is agile. He lives in that costume pretty much during shooting. But let's talk about the rest of the cast, guys. So, Ethan, who were some other cast members that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I have to say that, the ensemble of Peter and his classmates and his teachers, they're almost like the secret power, in this movie. The chemistry that he has with, Ned, the actor that's Jacob, I'm not even sure how to pronounce his last name.
Jacob Balaton.
Their chemistry is phenomenal. And, the chemistry that he has with Zendaya, who plays, this universe's MJ. I think it's the most believable sort of high school romance that we've seen in a Spider-Man movie. Most of the, Tobey Maguire and Kristen Dunst were phenomenal. Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, their chemistry was probably the only worthwhile thing of the amazing movies. But they always felt like grown, college relationships or 20-something relationships. So this really feels like two teenagers who have crushes on each other and don't know what on earth to do about it. And then the chemistry is great. The whole supporting cast, the teachers, they're just all delightful. And, it gives the movie stakes, because if you don't care about, these people, then it really doesn't mean anything. And this movie really captured that, that ensemble cast helps him capture that great formula where, every time Spider-Man wins, Peter loses. Yeah. And, there's just some classic moments right out of the comics of Peter finally getting, moving closer to his goal of spending time with the girl that he cares about. And then, well, the world is on fire and he's got to gin up a terrible excuse for leaving right when he wants so desperately to stay. And that's a classic Spider-Man trope that the movie made fresh and relevant to younger audiences today. And I think that's, a testament to the whole cast of classmates and teachers.
Absolutely, man. And you mentioned the teachers, Ethan, and the two teachers that really steal the limelight here are portrayed by J.B. Smoove and Martin Starr. Those two actors absolutely made the school trip, and I was rolling the entire time with these guys.
Oh, yeah, they were hilarious, man.
Tooch, they kind of captured a little bit of you, man. I kind of reminded me of you a little bit.
Neurotic?
No. Just like a dad,
Yeah, they were funny, man. I love the way they kind of rolled with the changes when their itinerary was being manipulated by S.H.I.E.L.D. So
yeah,
it was really funny, man. And then the classmates of I love Ned, the character of Ned. Now, you got a lot of Ned, man. It was hilarious with his views on relationships were like uncharacteristically adult. So I enjoyed that part of the film. Talk about rolling with the changes. Nothing gets him down. So I love Ned. Yeah, Ned was great, man. And then Samuel L. Jackson and Jake Gyllenhaal. Two fantastic actors. Who Jake Gyllenhaal was excellent, man. He was so good. From I don't want to say too much, but let's just say he brought both sides of the character.
Yes, he did, and very true to comic form, right, Ethan?
Yeah. One of the things that Homecoming did so well was modernize the Vulture, and Spider-Man. Second, maybe only to Batman, and just having a really deep bench of great villains, and to where you can go, you don't have to double up on the villains we've seen before. He still has plenty that to go, and the way they modernized the Vulture in Homecoming was genius, and then even more so bringing Mysterio into the 21st century. I was curious how they were going to do it, and they didn't disappoint at all.
Yeah, they knocked it out of the park, and just a couple other people I want to highlight from the cast. I will say Jon Favreau did a fantastic job as Happy Hogan yet again, kind of falling into the unintended fatherly figure of Spider-Man, which I loved him in that role, and I loved everything that he did and his relationship with Peter, and his relationship with Aunt May, who's the other person I want to spotlight. I thought Marissa Tomei was fantastic and very limited screen time, but she still did a really nice job. And she gave us one of the movie's most memorable lines, and here's that sound clip for everybody.
I thought that you could sense that with your Peter tingle.
Do not start calling it my Peter tingle.
Love the Peter tingle.
Love the Peter tingle. Really loved. I think the way Homecoming ended with Aunt May, discovering Peter's double life as Spider-Man. I think the obvious choice would have been that she wants him to quit right away, and that she is horribly upset, and is going to always be there nagging him. And what a great, delightful choice to have her be on his side and in his corner and rooting for him as Spider-Man. And I just thought that gave Marissa Tomei so much fun stuff to do, and it was just an unexpected joy to have that be her reaction to finding out that her nephew is Spider-Man.
Yeah, I love that. And we're just about ready to move into the spoiler section, guys, but before we do, I would like to get a letter grade from all of you. So Tooch, I'm going to start with you. What letter grade are you giving Spider-Man Far From Home?
It's a solid A for me, Joe. This is a movie I'd probably own on Blu-ray when it comes out. It's one to have in your library. Break it out. You have the right audience. You need to keep some, kids, young adults, or adults, occupied for a good hour or two. You throw it in the Blu-ray player. Pull it out of the library, throw in the Blu-ray player, and solid A for me, Joe.
Love it, man. And Ethan, how about you, sir?
Well, I don't do this often, but this is a straight up A+ for me. I thought it was just phenomenal. Stuck the landing. I mean, all the metaphors you can come up with. And I think kind of to Tooch's point, like it really is that 4-quadrant movie. We took our daughter to see it, who's 9, and the next day she asked if we could go again. And she maybe she had some radioactive spider powers, because she twisted my arm just enough to take her to see it again the next day. And the fact that across the generations, the two of us were laughing and riveted and a little misty at parts. It just worked perfectly for both of us. So for me, it's definitely going to be one for the library, and it's going to get a lot of repeat viewings.
Damn, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and echo that sentiment. I don't do it very often either, guys, but I loved every second of this. I think this is the perfect Spider-Man film, and this is getting the A+ stamp of approval from me. It not only is it a great time at the movies, it continues on after Avengers Endgame, and it brings you a really compelling story, coming-of-age story, which I sound like a bad movie trailer guy, but it's the truth. It's a coming-of-age story. It's a story about responsibility, and it's a story about, stepping up in the pocket. And I really think it's the best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen, and it gives me great hope for the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The post-credit scenes are mind-blowing. We will talk about them later, I promise you.
No.
But I will
say... Moviegoers agree. $185 million opening weekend.
Wow, that's... This is the sound effect for that.
Yeah, blockbuster.
Blockbuster.
That's because
explosion.
We saw it twice already. Opening week.
The Colchamiros single-handedly financing Marvel films.
Yeah.
Well, we answer the call. I mean, we do what we have to do.
That's right. But, ladies and gentlemen, we have all talked about the generic plot lines. But Tooch, you know what that means now.
Spoiler alert.
That's right. It means it's time for us to take a dip into the spoiler section. Spoiler alert! That's right. So when you hear the spoiler alert, you know that means it's time to turn it off if you haven't seen the movie. But if you have, stick around because we're going to have a good time talking about all the details. And Tooch, here at Box Office Barflies, we always start the spoiler section by talking about the opening scene. And this is one of the most hilarious opening scenes that I can remember in a long time. Tooch, why don't you break it down a little bit for us?
Was that the Mexican village?
Oh, right. Technically, yeah. So that's part one. I'm talking about part two, but yes, go ahead and introduce that part.
Okay, so the destroyed Mexican village with that film actually opens with Nick Fury and Maria Hill. I think, is that her name, Maria Hill?
That's right.
An agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
That's her.
Yeah. It's a destroyed Mexican village where some sort of creature has a cyclone with a face, right? A cloud or hurricane with a face. So the Nick Fury and Agent Hill are investigating down in Mexico, and sure enough, shows up again, and Mysterio was there, right, Joe?
Mysterio was there in all his brilliance, taking care of this monster, and dramatically enough, Maria Hill and Nick Fury walk up, and he turns around, and he goes, "You don't want any part of this."
Yeah, it was great. And Mysterio, a great way to start the film, because he was the mystery of the movie. His story, his motives, where he came from, his origin story was the central mystery. There was a lot of other. They really wove together a bunch of plots, including the high school summer vacation, the Ned and May romance, the Mysterio backstory, and then Spider-Man's his conflict between doing, the Spider-Man saving, rescuing superhero stuff, or being a kid who has a girlfriend and goes to school, and having to make the choice was the deeper theme running through the film.
Yeah, it was, and that opening was great with Mysterio, but let's talk for a second about the second half of that opening. And when I say the most hilarious part, I'm not talking about the Mysterio part. I'm talking about after they roll the Marvel opening cinematic pre-credits, whatever you want to call it. And it starts with it's Peter's high school, and it's like a terrible montage remembering all of the fallen Avengers.
Yeah, with Whitney Houston singing, right? Was Whitney Houston, "I Will Always Love You"?
Yeah, so it was hilarious, and the editing was so bad it literally looks like it was done by a high schooler, and that's kind of what made it so funny, and especially with the terrible high school news anchors. To me, it's one of the best openings in a Marvel movie. Ethan, how did you like the opening?
Well, in terms of the in memoriam opening, I know all three of us work in marketing and design in some way, or graphics. The Comic Sans in memoriam, hysterical. The Getty Images watermark on the candle, phenomenal. And both times I saw it, as cheeseball as the little sequence is and hysterical, people were erupting in applause at Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson. Paul Bettany, as their respective characters were on the screen, and it worked in two different levels. One, it was a proper farewell, or tip of the hat to those characters that we're probably not going to see much of in the future, and then also brought you back into the just really charming world of Peter Parker's Midtown High School Science Academy, and so it worked on two levels, and that's what made it great. You're clapping, you're laughing, and you're back in the headspace of we're not on a gigantic spaceship, we're not in a high-tech headquarters, we're in a high school with teenagers.
Yeah, and it felt so authentic, and I think that's one of the most important things in this movie, is it kind of brings you into that, and the whole dynamic of it being about a coming-of-age story is kind of thrown in your face in the beginning, because you have these teenagers and then you see Peter kind of being an adult and doing adult things, but also striving to be a kid again. And the fact is funny because he's still a kid, but he's got so much responsibility. And the fact that he's looking forward to this vacation really sets up the whole movie. So the class is taking a trip to Europe, right? So they're supposed to go to Venice, and then I believe Paris is what's supposed to happen. But Tooch, that's not what happens, is it?
No, I love that intro part too, with the way they explain the post-snap. You know, where some people aged 5 years while others were away.
Yeah.
You know, so I thought it was a really clever way to get us back into the post-snap universe of Marvel. I really enjoyed that. You know, people reappeared in the middle of a basketball game, I think, in one scene.
Yeah.
And so one of the characters, his name was it Adam, or was it Ethan or Adam, or the one who likes MJ as well as
Brad Davis.
Brad.
Yeah, who's
Davis,
portrayed by actor Remy Hill, or Remy
He apparently was younger now. They came back post snap, and he was as old as them. You know, it was like he was a kid, or a smaller kid, and now he was as old as Peter and his classmates. So it was funny that they had to redo their whole. They had taken their finals or something. They had to redo the whole
midterms.
They took their midterms. They had to redo the whole year. That was funny too. You know, it figures. Yeah, but
classic Parker luck.
The trip to Europe, right, was Venice. I said Venice looked great, and you know, the Hydro Man, Water Monster, comes. They had a little nod to Hydro Man, which you know was one of Spider-Man's villains in the comics. But the way that Venice getting destroyed, I mean, looked fantastic. I mean, the
sure
Rialto Bridge, man, getting destroyed. St. Mark's Square. Or Plaza, the Doge's Palace, you know, the CGI was amazing. You know, it looked so real. We know that they didn't destroy Venice, but man, it looked absolutely real.
Yeah, you imagine this crew is going to have some award nominations for their work here, because it's quite the achievement, and Ethan especially can attest to the art side of it. Ethan, I know you work different kind of art, but you have an appreciation for it. And tell me how you feel about the CGI in this film.
Yeah, I thought it was seamless. You know, I mean, sometimes the movies, you know, these movies are always chasing a release date, and you know, you stay for the credits. There's an army of people, you know, behind the scenes making these CGI scenes, and you can get mixed results. But I think Far From Home, you know, fittingly, when you have, you know, the main antagonist, someone who is all about their illusions, it's, you know, fitting that the illusions in the movie were so believable. And, you know, talking about one thing I wanted to bring up, you know, talking about the way this movie opens, we really have to talk about how it didn't open, which is with an overwhelming majority of the trailer nowhere to be seen in the film. I think everybody was expecting to see Peter in his Iron Spider costume, you know, fighting some gangsters or doing some things, you know. And I remember even just that first trailer, our daughter and I were constantly doing our new favorite tongue twister, the Peter Parker here to pick up a passport, please. And we didn't get that in the film at all. So that was, you know, I guess kind of fitting, since the whole theme of the movie really, or one of the many themes of the movie, is misdirection.
Yeah,
true.
I'm curious to see. I've heard some rumors of either a short film showing, you know, what we missed from the trailer, or just, you know, a record-breaking amount of deleted scenes on the Blu-ray. But you know, there's obviously a lot of stuff that was filmed that we didn't get to see, and I'm excited to see that stuff. But I also like kind of, you know, using the elementals, which are deep cut.
Yes, they are
villains. But they did kind of make you think, like, wait, is Sandman in this? Is Hydro Man in this? Which, you know, is a fun sort of way to ride that theme of misdirection and illusion.
Yeah, it was really top-notch visuals, and once they get through Venice, Tooch, we talked a little bit about the destruction and how great it looked, and of course Nick Fury gets involved. He finds Peter, and they want him to help with Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio, to get rid of these elementals that Ethan was just talking about, and that's going to take them on their next stop, which is Prague. And Peter's busy having his vacation, doesn't want anything to do with it. He politely declines, and sure enough, S.H.I.E.L.D., aka Nick Fury, steps in and diverts the school trip with a free upgrade to Prague.
Right.
No coincidence, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Peter has alternate plans of his own. He's purchased a black dahlia made of blown glass in Venice, and plans to give it to MJ at the top of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. But those plans are quickly scuttled. Peter, it's important to note that he didn't even want to bring his suit along on this trip. He wanted to leave Spider-Man back in the friendly neighborhood and of Queens, and his mom packed his suit for him. I thought that was great, with a note. He almost forgot. And
Aunt May, Aunt May,
custom. Aunt May, sorry, his Aunt May listed in his. Well, she is kind of his mom, but left it in. Packed it in his suitcase, telling me he forgot his suit, and the customs officer in Italy was only concerned about a banana. So, did you all notice on Spider-Man's suitcase it had BFP, the initials BFP, which was Uncle Ben. It must have been Uncle Ben's suitcase.
Yeah.
Right. So that was a nice touch. There's lots of Easter eggs. I love the trip through the Alps. The Alps are beautiful. The scenes of the Alps, and of course, where the van driver is a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent as well, named Dimitri. And he, of course, before that, we have to talk about Nick Fury giving Peter a gift from Tony Stark, which plays a huge part in the movie. It's Tony's glasses that control a lot of Stark technology, and it's the nuclear bomb of the movie, so to speak. That's the bad guys want. And the relationship between Peter Parker and Nick Fury was hilarious. With it's a running joke of how Peter's ghosting Nick Fury throughout the movie. Yeah. And Happy Hogan also ghosting Nick Fury. But we'll talk at the very end. We don't want to give it away just at the very end, but perhaps the ghosting was warranted when they're at the final reveal. But the trip takes a detour to Prague, where they're supposed to take on the fire elemental, or an elemental is approaching. But love Prague. The shots of Prague. I mean, the locations were fantastic, man. If you've never been to Europe, you don't have any plans to go, you just watch this movie. You get some great locations. You've got Venice, Prague, and London. Man, just some great landmarks. I mean, they blow up the Tower Bridge. There's a scene, fight scene inside the Tower of London, and the crown jewels in the background. So I mean, it's almost a European history trip.
Yeah, it really is. And let's touch on, Tooch, that trip to Prague real quick with that battle against the elemental, which is the fiery elemental, arguably supposed to be the most dangerous one. And Peter gets involved. Sure enough, he runs away from his opera date with MJ and the rest of his class.
Yeah.
And he gets a special suit that makes him look like he's not Spider-Man in Europe, because he wants to maintain that Spider-Man does not come to Europe.
Right.
And it gets coined by his friend Jacob.
Ned.
Or Ned, who's played by Jacob. His friend Ned coins it Night Monkey.
It was awesome. Night Monkey.
Probably one of the best lines of the movie, and then it picks up in the news outlets, and they start calling him Night Monkey. But Peter fights the elemental, doesn't do so hot, but he helps. But of course, Mysterio's set up to be the hero. He sacrifices himself, and just makes it out alive barely.
That was great. Yeah, I have a question. I mean, with Tony Stark's glasses on, which looked great, he was able to control a drone and accidentally sends a drone to kill Brad. Right?
Yeah, that was
on the
great.
bus. That was a great scene. The drones looked like they were the same drones that Mysterio used.
They were. So if you remember, later on
Right.
in the film, they do launch using Stark drones. So we'll talk about that in just a second.
Yeah, that was my question.
But after they win that victory in Prague, quote unquote victory in the air quotes, Peter and Quentin Beck go to the local tavern for a delicious beverage. Peter drinks non-alcoholic, of course. But Ethan, what happens inside of that quote unquote bar?
Well, a couple of great things. Quentin and Peter have a sort of a heart-to-heart, and Peter comes to the realization that he's not ready to handle this multi-billion-dollar smart glasses that allow him to control basically the planet's security apparatus, and after this heart-to-heart decides that Quentin Beck is the one who should have them, which turns out to be exactly what Beck's plan was from the get-go, is to get those glasses and control of the entire Stark security system under his control. And that was, I think anyone who was even sort of a casual Spider-Man fan kind of knows that Mysterio is one of his villains, and even the trailers set him up as a good guy. I think anyone with a kind of a passing knowledge of Spidey knew that wasn't going to be the case. And one of the things that I was wondering as I was watching the movie was how is Mysterio pulling the wool over everybody's eyes with these intense battles? In the comics he was a former Hollywood stuntman and an illusionist who did practical effects, and obviously in the 21st century that's not gonna fly. And to reveal that he'd been using drones to cause the actual damage that his illusions were causing, I thought was genius. It was absolutely brilliant. And also there was a really good play on what the Raimi movies always did. The Raimi movies always set up a father figure in their villains, and always had it be somebody that had a connection to Peter's personal life. And I thought this was the first time the MCU sort of gave a little nod to that trope, or and almost set it up as, well, here's a new sort of father figure for him. And then of course it was, a horrible betrayal. And it really, also calls into mind that this is a 16-year-old who, makes a lot of mistakes as 16-year-olds do. And so a lot of really meaningful and important and emotionally resonant things happen in that scene in that bar.
Yeah, I love the character that Jake Gyllenhaal portrayed as Mysterio. Man, he was just like all good guy, he was just, and I'm from Earth 833, you're Earth 616, and he immediately intrigues Peter because there's a multiverse, but he's got all these questions and stuff. It's great. And I was wondering, I don't know if you guys watch Rick and Morty, but isn't Rick from Earth 616 too? I was just wondering if they ripped off Marvel, but I was wondering who named our Earth 616. I never knew in the comics.
I actually have a really I have a pretty nerdy answer to that. But Joe, you can take it if you'd like.
No, you can probably explain it way better than me.
So in Marvel Comics, there have been different dimensions, most notably sort of the ultimate dimension, which is where the character of Miles Morales lives. And when they were differentiating the two dimensions, the classic Marvel Comics dimension was known as Earth 616. and I believe that was a reference to the issue number of a particular comic. It might have been a Spider-Man comic at that point was was issue 616, or Fantastic Four was 616, but the primary Marvel universe is Earth 616. So that and it wouldn't surprise me to find that Rick and Morty were aping that from Marvel Comics.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
The Mysterio costume was great, but I kept wondering if that fishbowl was going to break, but like, it's not glass, it's like a force field, but it was great. It's like a force field filled with smoke, man. It was so cool. His costume was great, man. It was perfect.
It was. The costume work was top notch in this film as well.
It was excellent. He flew around. He had these great, like almost Doctor Strange like green power. It was excellent.
Yeah, it was really well done.
I knew though from the comics that Mysterio was a bad guy, or a nemesis of Spider-Man. But I was like, man, what if he's like a hero? We lost Captain America, we lost, Iron Man, Endgame, and man, maybe Mysterio would be a really cool character. But of course, that's not the script for this movie.
Not at all.
Not to be.
They really had a great script, man. They had an excellent script, man. There were so many like head fakes with the illusions that in London you didn't know what was real, and I love that, man. That was almost a nod to Sam Raimi too, with the violent kind of illusion world that Spider-Man entered for a brief second, where he got his ass smoked a couple times.
Oh man, they put him through the ringer.
Yeah, ending with getting hit by a train, man, which drew blood. His hands were covered in blood, so. Yeah, that was a great sequence right there.
Yes, it was, and all those illusions were so well done, and obviously the whole getting to London and picking up finally for him decided, I'm going to be Spider-Man. I'm going to be the best Spider-Man I can be. He has that great talk with Happy Hogan in the jet, and then Peter designs his own suit and kind of. You see that light kind of go off in his head where he becomes the next Tony Stark, guys. You see that. And it gives me such great hope for the next phase, phase 4 of this universe, because he designs his own suit. He designs his own web shooters with this tech. And he 3D prints a suit right there on the damn jet.
That was great.
Yeah, it was a great moment. And I think one of the overarching themes of the movie that I really enjoyed is, is he going to be a global hero the way Iron Man and the other Avengers were? Or is he going to try to stay a friendly neighborhood, hero, which is maybe more befitting of a 16-year-old who just want to basically make sure the people in his neighborhood are safe, but he's not saving the entire planet, which, more than a 16-year-old is ready to handle. But, and I think the movie keeps making that choice increasingly difficult for him, and where people need to be saved, but at the same time, there's other people that he thinks are probably better suited for that job, and he still does want to be a teenager who has a girlfriend, so yeah, I really liked that theme of, are you going to be the next Iron Man? Or are you going to just be you? Nick Fury asks him the question, are you going to step up? And that's really the question of the whole movie.
It really is. And, we talked about that talk with Happy, and it kind of peps him up and it leads you into that final battle. So Spider-Man dives into London. He's going to take on Mysterio's last illusion, which is powered by Tony Stark's glasses, a.k.a. Edith. It's got control of all the Stark drones. And those illusions are programmed into that by ex-Stark employees that are working with Quentin Beck.
That was a great reveal too, with the ex-employees by oral something radio frequency, calling it BARF or whatever. The acronym that Tony like totally embarrassed, Quentin Beck, his life's work.
Yeah,
Tony's an arrogant dick,
Yeah.
But that was really funny, man. No, was that a flashback from one of the other movies? I can't remember.
Most of those were flashbacks. The only one that they altered, I believe, is the Gyllenhaal appearance, right?
Okay, that's what. Yeah,
right. Yeah, they sort of inserted Gyllenhaal into some parts from sorry, into some scenes from Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And to kind of plant the seed of when he became a disgruntled Stark employee. But the funny thing about his Quentin Beck's sort of right-hand man was the poor Stark scientist who was told he was supposed to build an arc reactor for Obadiah Stane.
Right.
And was told, Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scraps, and he had his famous line, I'm not Tony Stark. Fun little Easter egg is that actor who was not Tony Stark is Ralphie from Christmas Story.
No shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Jon Favreau's producing partner and produced Iron Man, and they just thought it would be fun to have him do a little cameo.
Nice.
So it was super fun to see that character get brought back.
That's great.
Yeah, Peter Billingsley. Yeah, Ralphie from Christmas Story. All grown up and
they learn something new every day.
Not Tony Stark though.
He's definitely not Tony Stark, and Peter establishes himself as not Tony Stark either. He establishes himself as the Spider-Man, the real Spider-Man, and he comes in and he gets into the middle of the illusion, which we find out is powered by thousands of drones, and of course chaos ensues. Yeah, projections, exactly.
Yeah.
Chaos ensues. Happy and Zendaya, aka MJ, and the rest of the crew run away from drones, and Peter gets to go kick Quentin's ass, basically, guys. Tooch, how was that last scene for you?
Yeah, it was great. The rescuing his classmates, throughout the movie, that was kind of Peter's charge. Was his friends were constantly getting in the way of danger, and he had to, slip out and put on the suit and rescue his friends, and then sneak back, and that brought suspicions, from Flash and wasn't Flash and some other people,
Yeah.
He's obviously Spider-Man. He disappeared in Washington D.C. and whenever Spider-Man appears, Parker's gone. So yeah, the scene in London where his struggle was he let the glasses go. He thought he was doing the right thing, but it turned out to be a mistake. You can't trust anybody. You can't trust everybody. And I got to get those glasses back. That really weighed heavy on him. He had to go in and really try to guess the next move, and he did with the great scene where he knew that the gun was going to be pointed at him. Try to stay one step ahead of the illusion. I thought that was really part of that brilliant script.
Well, and let's be honest, guys, that final scene, Peter found his Peter tingle, aka his Spidey sense, and it started working again because he wants to be Spider-Man, and he's able to use all his powers, and that's kind of what helped him there. And talk about an ending scene, man. So powerful. And Quentin Beck's last couple words, kind of chill to the core. And we'll touch on the spoiler scene, the end credits scene in just a minute. But Ethan, what were your thoughts on that last battle with Mysterio?
Well, I mean, that was something that definitely gave me chills. I mean, it was a really riveting action scene. Really my only big beef with Spider-Man Homecoming, was some of the action was a little underwhelming, and anytime you're going to make a Spider-Man movie, Sam Raimi is one of the, all-time great visual directors who can put together an action set piece. So any Spider-Man movie is going to be held up to that standard, and Homecoming kind of fell short in the action, but Far From Home, was just a huge step forward. That final action scene absolutely gave me chills. It was a great way to visualize his spider sense. And I thought, Gyllenhaal also did a great job of playing a scene where, you know, this is a regular guy and he's going up against a teenager who could, you know, deadlift a school bus, you know, and so if those illusions don't work, he knows he's toast, you know, and I think Gyllenhaal played that with the right amount of fear and desperation and anger, and you know, seeing Peter go through those drones and take them out one at a time. I had chills, you know, when that final drone gets taken out. Both times I've seen it, the audience erupts in applause, and because you absolutely feel like you just saw, you know, a hero come into his own. And you know, I don't know if we're ready to touch on that last line that Gyllenhaal had.
Yeah, but I think we are.
You know, I think, you know, one of the things that, you know, Marvel Comics did that was really radical in the 60s and 70s was place their comics squarely in the real world. And, you know, these characters are living in the same world we live in and have the same problems that we have. And, you know, Gyllenhaal's last line, which was, you know, people will believe what you tell them to. I mean, that's every day for us right now when we're turning on the TV, and it's so hard to know what's fake news, what's real. We all have our confirmation bubble that we're in.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
You know, Mysterio is absolutely a villain for our time because he is taking advantage of you know, our addiction to screens and our desire to be told. Yeah, our desire to be told what we want to hear. You know, so that last scene was, you know, and also as a Spidey fan, you know, post Raimi, all the Spider-Man movies have had mechanical web shooters, which is great, is comics accurate, but a classic thing from the Spidey movies is him running out of webbing right when he needs it the most. And this was the first movie to really do that, is it really pay off with the mechanical web shooters. And then it shows, you know, he's got to use the other spectacular powers he has, and his best power, which is his intelligence and his you know, perseverance. And so that was a great, you know, action showing character kind of moment, and a classic Spidey moment.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that illusion for today, because recently I had seen in the news, like, they were, you know, they're able to make like a likeness of anybody digitally, so that, you know, anybody could confess or deliver any kind of controversial news or statement, you know, digitally, and it not even be that person. I think they used Barack Obama or Barack Obama was the one talking about it. They could make a likeness of him and say things that he would never say, and set it out there as news and have the world believe it. But so Mysterio really embodied that for me. I was thinking about that during the movie. I was like, wow, these illusions, man, they could do anything, you know, show people anything, and, you know, foment a riot, you know.
And Tooch, the fake news is a great segue, right, into the first post-credit scene, or should I say mid-credit, technically. So it starts with Peter giving MJ a web-slinging ride through the city, you know, basically, you know, hanging on, taking her around, and she gets that web-slinging experience. End of story. She didn't much care for it. She's like, I'm never doing that again. And then Peter hops onto a light post and is watching a breaking news story that breaks. And Ethan, what happens?
Oh, boy.
Who is it?
Well, yeah, right there on Madison Square Garden, on the Jumbotron, we get introduced to none other than maybe Peter's greatest villain, J. Jonah Jameson, and which we find, you know, I think for the longest time, it was such a great reveal that J.K. Simmons is back as J. Jonah Jameson, a very different J. Jonah Jameson, and back, and it's just a very classic Spidey moment. Reveals a doctored video that Mysterio had put together, and Mysterio's partner, Peter Billingsley, that frames Spider-Man for the drone attack and all of the damage and the casualties, and also makes it seem as though he murders Mysterio in cold blood. And then, of course, J. Jonah Jameson reveals the second half of the video where Quentin Beck tells the world that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and we see a giant picture of Peter on the Jumbotron in Madison Square Garden right there in Midtown Manhattan for the world to see. And it's really such a classic Spidey moment that and then bam, we cut to the credits. And it was a great callback too, because he has a little "what the f" moment, which was exactly how Homecoming ended when Aunt May sees Peter take his mask off, and she has a little "what the f," and we cut to the credits.
Yeah.
So a nice callback to the identity reveal in Homecoming. Of course, this one has much higher stakes, as his identity has now been revealed to the world.
Absolutely, and for me, it was just a total shocker moment I was not prepared for. It changes everything for the next phase, knowing that everyone knows his identity. It kind of threw back to me a little bit at the end of Iron Man 1, where Tony Stark's like, I am Iron Man. And while Peter didn't decide that, it kind of has that same feeling a little bit for me. Like, the kid's like, I'm Spider-Man now, so I might as well embrace it. So that's how I took that. And Tooch, there's another post-credit scene that follows at the very, very end of the credits. And this is also a huge game changer as well for the next phase. Tooch, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a little hard for me to figure out what was going on, but we find out that throughout this movie, Nick Fury and Maria Hill were not really Nick Fury and Maria Hill, but it was Talos, the Skrull from Captain Marvel, and another Skrull playing Maria, which I thought, I love the voice of Talos, by the way, played by Ben Mendelsohn.
Oh, yeah.
But, his voice is hilarious. And then he had been playing Nick Fury for the whole movie, which maybe, was kind of one of the reasons why he was fooled by Quentin Beck Mysterio. And Nick Fury, the real Nick Fury, might not have been. But Nick Fury, the real Nick Fury, is sitting on a beach, or is he? Another misdirection, but he's watching a holographic projection of a beach, and he's on a space station somewhere with a bunch of Skrulls. So I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe it's setting up Captain Marvel 2. I don't know. I don't really know what was going on with Nick Fury and his mission. How long has he been on the space station? Have we had Talos as Nick Fury for quite some time? Even through Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. So
he did say
the real Nick Fury disappeared in the snap of Infinity War, at the end of Infinity War, correct?
Yes, he did, and he did say that he was at Stark's funeral. So at least we think he was there for that, and then maybe he went on his long vacation. But Ethan, this is the part where we get you involved because you're the comic guy. So I know a little bit about Sword and Shield. Does this set up Sword, and what do you think about the post-credit scene?
Well, I thought it was a fun scene, and I thought that there was a lot of, it answered a lot of the questions. Number one, like why would he say don't invoke her name when Peter brings up Captain Marvel, which makes a lot more sense for Talos to say that than Nick Fury, and just in general, some of the odd behavior that Nick Fury and Maria Hill exhibited throughout the movie. That was just seemed slightly off, and then you realize, okay, maybe that makes sense. It wasn't them the whole time, and there's a lot of theories about how far back Talos as Nick Fury goes. Some eagle-eyed people have noticed that in Age of Ultron, Nick Fury makes himself a sandwich and cuts it diagonally, whereas in Captain Marvel he said, if bread is cut diagonally, he can't eat it. So that's
wow.
the internet, the internet notices everything.
Yep.
But yeah, as far as setting up Sword, that's an interesting question, and I think that one of the things when they brought Skrulls into Captain Marvel that I was a little nervous about is in the comics. I think over the decades that Skrulls became sort of a get out of jail free card anytime the writers kind of wrote themselves into a corner, and it was just like, whoops, they were Skrulls, so
right.
none of that stuff matters, or nothing happened. So my hope is that the comics or the movies, now that they have Skrulls, use them judiciously, because obviously a super quick fix for Peter's identity being revealed to the world is to have a Skrull Peter and then Spider-Man swing by or something like that, which is just I hope that the movies don't lean on the Skrulls too hard and kind of make everything basically have no consequences. So that's kind of my feeling on that end reveal is.
Yeah.
I hope there was a reason for it. I mean, maybe it could have just been sort of like Peter after coming back from being dusted. He wanted to go on vacation. Maybe Nick Fury just needed a vacation, and there's nothing more to it than that. But it'll be interesting to see what if anything, that end scene kind of sets up.
Yeah,
right, they haven't announced their slate yet, have they?
They have not, but that's a fantastic. It's a fantastic segue, because Ethan and I know that San Diego Comic-Con, I believe, is it this weekend, Ethan?
I think it actually might. It's either this weekend or next weekend. We're definitely. It's definitely imminent.
And there's a huge Marvel panel where they will be announcing a good chunk of the next slate.
Nice.
And we actually got a little bit of breaking news today, a little bit before we went live on the air.
Oh, nice. Do we need the news theme music?
Yeah, I'll have to dig it out. I don't have it ready for today. I'll just
That's all right.
I'll just go ahead and throw it out there. But they just cast in the Marvel The Eternals movie that's going to be coming out. Millie Bobby Brown from Netflix, from Stranger Things, has been cast in the Eternals film, which is pretty exciting. And you already know that Angelina Jolie is going to be in the film, as well as Kumail Nanjiani, who was in Men in Black that we reviewed.
Right. Yeah.
And then Richard Madden, who is from Game of Thrones, of course. And then also Keanu Reeves and Salma Hayek are also reportedly up for roles in the same movie. So I think Marvel's going to announce a lot of stuff in the next week or two. And I can't wait to hear more, because there's going to be a lot of cosmic stuff in this round. And I'm excited to see what's next.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they've been trying to keep it quiet, but I mean, I think we know that Black Panther 2 is on the slate. Doctor Strange 2 is on the slate. The Black Widow prequel has already started filming, and we've seen some set photos, from eagle-eyed passerbys. So I'm excited for seeing it. It is next weekend, and I think Marvel has kind of skipped Hall H for a year or two now. So the fact that they're back means that they have some pretty huge announcements. So I'm super jazzed for that.
I'd love to see the Inhumans are going to be like is it a series, TV series, Inhumans, Black Bolt and.
I think they gave that a shot, and it didn't quite.
I'd love to see that.
Didn't go the distance. That was a fun.
Did you see Dark Phoenix?
I didn't.
Okay, neither did we. We were like, we're a little scared off by the reviews. I love the X-Men. The X-Men are probably my favorite. X-Men and Avengers, my favorites. Marvel comics.
Tooch, ask me again if I saw Dark Phoenix.
Joe, you didn't happen to see Dark Phoenix? Right, and it'd be nice to get that Fantastic Four franchise back into the fold with the,
that's my prediction, Tooch. That's my big.
That would be great.
That's my surprise prediction for Comic-Con. I think they're going to announce Fantastic Four.
That would be awesome, man. I love the first one with Captain America as Human Torch. But, the second one was a bit dark. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
It's back in the right home now that Marvel has control. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, the first one was, I went back and watched that reboot of Fantastic Four a second time. It wasn't as bad as I initially thought it was. It was kind of cool, but it seemed like it tried too hard to be like cool, but didn't really need to. It was a little dark, which I liked, and I liked some of the new twists they put on it, but the script was terrible.
Yeah, it was not good.
Yeah. But any final thoughts on Far From Home?
Yeah, I mean, that reveal of J. Jonah Jameson and Peter's identity being splashed out in the world opens just a ton of story opportunities, and that's a classic thing of Peter's identity getting revealed, from the comics, and then him working out a way to throw everyone off the scent. And it's great to see J. Jonah Jameson back in. I think every time me and my nerd friends, we try to, well, who's going to be the new J. Jonah Jameson? How do you follow J.K. Simmons? And the bottom line is you don't follow him. You just bring him back in. And it's definitely an interesting choice to kind of put him in this sort of Alex Jones conspiracy theory kind of, I don't think that imagery was a mistake or an accident at all. I think they have a clear plan of the role that J. Jonah Jameson's playing in the future movies, and I can't wait. I mean, there's a ton of stuff from the comics that they can use. J. Jonah Jameson was instrumental in turning Matt Gargan into the Scorpion to hunt down Spider-Man, and that dude's still in a jail cell somewhere with the Vulture. So I mean, there's a million things that they can go from here, and I'll pre-order my ticket today if I could.
Will Spider-Man become a member of the new Avengers? Is that the world thinks he's a murderer right now, so that'll be interesting to see how the other Marvel heroes react to that. Does I in my mind, if Marvel wrote me a check and said start writing, I'd have Wilson Fisk sue Peter Parker for property damage, and then the only lawyers he can afford are Nelson and Murdoch. And
it's set up perfectly that way.
That would be great.
That movie just writes itself right there, But who knows if Marvel's thinking the same way? But I mean, there's a million, and there was a ton of Easter eggs. I mean, Dimitri, one of the classic Spider-Man villains, the Chameleon. His first name was Dimitri, and his half brother was Kraven the Hunter. So maybe those were some seeds they were planting there.
The director of Far From Home actually came out this week and said he would love to have Kraven be the next villain. So,
nice. I couldn't agree more. I'd love to see that on the big screen.
Very cool.
But we covered it all, ladies and gents. We
sure
talked
did.
about Far From Home, all our feelings, all the spoilers. And first off, I want to thank our special guest, Ethan Colchamiro, for joining us tonight. Ethan, where can everybody find you on Twitter, and tell us a little bit about your Twitter feed?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Ethan Colchamiro, which is a handful. That's almost more characters than a tweet will allow. But I'm all over the Box Office Barfly Twitter feed, so you can find me there. And then I have a Facebook page for my artwork called Ethan Drew That, and it's just fb.com/Ethan Drew That, or search Ethan Drew That. And I actually have a little collection of Spider-Man related art that I've been resharing in honor of Far From Home.
Nice.
That's awesome, man. And you do commissions as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Put me to work for you and get your own piece of Spider-Man art or any other hero you like.
All right, to hear Ethan on I Have a Stream next Monday, talking Stranger Things 3.
Awesome.
That would be
Thanks
awesome.
Thanks again for having me, fellas. Yeah, always love chatting with you.
We love having you, Ethan and Tooch. Thank you, my friend. Always appreciate it.
Oh, it was fun. Great movie to talk about. I'd love to see it again. Don't know if I'll have time, but I definitely will probably purchase this on Blu-ray.
Same here. And We will be back probably next week or the week after talking about Disney's The Lion King. So that's going to be a big one. That's hitting theaters very soon. I believe next weekend. So
I'm going to take the kids to see that one.
So we'll be talking about that very soon. And all you Barflies, thank you for tuning in to the Box Office Barflies podcast. Make sure you follow Bear's Barroom on Twitter. And also thanks to the barkeeper himself, Aldo Gandia, for letting us do what we love. And with that said, we will see you guys at the movies.